Today, we're going to take a look at the 2021 Ford Expedition XLT. We'll start out with the key. This is a standard Ford key that's pretty popular across all their models, but they're nicely weighted and feel generally pretty nice in your hand, but nothing super special here. Just an unlock, lock, the rear hatch button, which just unlocks it, and your panic button. Looking at the window sticker here, you'll see that this is an XLT. As I said, it does have the four-wheel drive option, and it is the Star White tri-coat on the outside. Those are the only options on this particular vehicle. $595 for the paint, $1,100 for the control track four-wheel drive, which brings the total on this guy to $59,250. The base price is $55,860. Up in the top corner here, you'll have 19 combined city and highway mile per gallon, with 22 on the highway and 17 in the city. At the front end of the Expedition here, it has pretty standard Ford styling, the cutouts for the headlights that remind you of the F-150. However, since this is a base model, there is no fancy lighting. The only thing you have is just some marker lights and things, but there's no LEDs or anything that are so common today. One thing it does have up front that is super handy, and I'm glad they included, are tow hooks. Looking down the side here of this Expedition, it's a pretty standard look here across all of this size of SUVs, but this one is particularly clean. I think they did a really good job. The cleaner the better, in my opinion. Not everybody may agree with that, but I really like how simple the whole side of this is, and there's really no quirks on the outside here. Now, included in the control track four-wheel drive package are 18-inch aluminum wheels that you can see here. They are mounted on Michelin 275/65 tires. One of the nice things that are included on this are running boards. However, they are not the power running boards that are so often found on higher end SUVs these days. They are just stationary, but still helpful getting in and out. At the back of the Expedition, if you hit your locks or unlocks, you'll notice that there is still no accent lighting out here. It just does a nice little flash for you. There is a cover for your hitch down below, which looks really nice, better than just your hitch sticking out. One of the curious things, though, are, like I mentioned in the beginning, there is a button that you have to push twice for the rear hatch. However, it doesn't actually make the rear hatch go up. It's not an automatic hatch. It just pops it. So I'm not exactly sure of the reason for that, because there's a button right in here that would work just the same, and you still have to reach your hand down into that to lift it up. One of the things that I noticed here with the hatch, when it's opened, you'll notice that there's actually an outline. I'm not sure how well it comes up on camera, but you can see this is where your buttons would be for your automatic down. You would press this and the hatch would close if it was optioned with that. It's very curious why you can still see that. It's a little just bit of a quality control issue there. Not a big deal, but I did notice it. Now, there's not a lot of space in the rear of this with the seats upright. There is some, you could put a couple suitcases here probably, but not any large ones, but like a carry-on size would be fine. There is some extra storage underneath right here that does give you some nice space if you want to put groceries or something in there and keep them from rolling around. One feature that this does have, which surprised me, is automatic flip for the rear seats, and you can do either side or all of them together, and it really works pretty well, and everything folds flat. Now, as you just heard, the little 3.5 liter in here is not going to win any sound awards. It sounds a little bit like a turbo V6, and it's pretty distinctive to the EcoBoost that Ford's been running for a while now, but it does put out V8 numbers even without the sound, and it's rated at 375 horsepower and 470 foot-pounds of torque, and it's mated to the 10-speed transmission that Ford has had out for a while now. Now, before going to the interior, I do have one nitpick type thing about the Expedition and a lot of cars today, and that is this doesn't have a proximity sensor for when you walk up to the vehicle that it automatically unlocks. Most cars have switched over to push button, and I don't understand the point of switching over to a push button if you're not also going to include the proximity sensor so that I don't have to pull the key out of my pocket to hit the unlocks. They should just unlock as you come up. It's not a lot more money. It seems like something that the automakers could just do, but a lot don't. So it's not something specific with the Ford. I just really wish that you could just walk up and not have to take the key out of your pocket. Looking at the door panel when you first step into your Expedition, you'll notice that it is nice and soft to the touch. There's some hard plastic down below, a lot of storage, which is really nice. One of the things that you'll notice that differentiates from the higher end models, rather than this being an XLT, is this just has the outline for this leather pad on top, rather than it actually being stitched in or anything, but it is still soft material and there's some cloth down here. It's nothing super special, but not too bad either. Now inside of the Expedition, the driver's seat is cloth, but does offer power lumbar and power front and back. However, recline is still manual. Now sitting inside of this Expedition, even though it's a 21, it has not gotten the newer dash upgrade that the F-150s have. This is still the same style that Ford has had for a few years in their trucks and SUVs. It is pretty basic. There is no stitched leather across the dash or anything like that, like some of the higher trim models do, but it's still very functional and really offers a lot of practicality. And most people who are buying a 8-passenger SUV are looking for that practicality. Some of that includes a large center console with USB and USB-C, as well as lots of storage up front, 2 big cup holders with some storage for your pens in the middle. In the center console, it is absolutely massive, with a removable container in there for a little bit more customization, but you could put just about anything on the inside there. There's also 12-volt outlets in the front, as well as a little bit more storage on the driver's side. Center console also has your shift selector. It is a dial, which most people are not a huge fan of, but it is becoming standard practice in the automotive industry, as well as some shift buttons down below for a manual mode, and then you have your drive modes and 4-wheel drive controls below that with a selectable dial. Now when you start the engine, there is a small screen on the dash, not as large as some of the other competitors and things, but it is pretty nice considering this is just a base model. You can also use your drive mode selector to select a variety of different modes for what you're doing that day, from eco to normal to sand, and these do even put it in 4-wheel drive if you're in the sand option or off-road. Now the infotainment on this obviously isn't a huge screen, but it still works really, really well. Everything is very touch responsive, reacts really quickly, and your home screen, you can easily just add your phone through that. There's also a lot of different settings that you can swipe through right here, and like I said, the touchscreen works really well, and I'm pretty impressed with it overall. I do like that they have volume dials rather than buttons or a slide or something like that. They actually feel pretty nice. They're maybe a little bit plasticky, but still for the vehicle and everything, they work really nice. Climate control down below here, everything there works really nice. It's really standard Ford stuff, but I like how their system functions. This is a standard Ford steering wheel, but does have a lot of buttons on it. You could either like that or not like it. It depends on, you know, whether you're used to it or not, but it does take a little bit more time maybe to get used to what everything does versus some other models. Well, the backseat door panel, everything is basically the same exact thing as the front, nothing too special there. There is 2 separate ways you can sort of fold down these rear seats. If you lift up here, that will fold flat, and all of these fold flat straight across, along with the back one is really functional for if you want to carry some larger supplies. The other option is if you want to get in the back seat, there is a release on the top shoulder section of the seat. This pops up and then rolls forward. It does have some weight to it, so you'll notice it. Little kids probably wouldn't be able to do it themselves, so you'd have to give them a hand, but it does work pretty well. Just a little bit more force is needed to get it to really roll. Now in the back seat here, you can see I have plenty of legroom. I actually have the driver's seat where I would normally drive. I don't have it slid up too far or anything like that. So it's got a lot of legroom. I am not a super tall person. I'm like 5'8". Sometimes I lie and say I'm like 6'3", but it's closer to 5'8". But it is plenty of space there, and you're not going to be uncomfortable regardless of height. Now I do see the headroom is a little bit closer, but I still think you could be a pretty tall person and be a comfortable passenger in the back seat of this. There is some really nice functionality in the back here as far as like USB outlets, USB-C, and 12-volt. Those are all back here for the rear passengers, as well as climate controls. Since this is a full bench seat in the rear, there is no center console because that one needs to flip down and it is an actual seat. I wish they would have included some way to have a center console in that because I really enjoy that when you're on a long drive, but they still have some cup holders up front and things that make it a little more bearable. With all that, now it's time to get this out on the road and see how it drives. All right, pulling out for the first time in the Expedition, the 2021 Expedition. Now I want to do a little bit of a pull here to get started. This is brand new, so I'm not going to be very hard on it or anything. It's not broken yet, but I just want to feel a little bit of how the 3.5 liter does. So let's give it a shot here. I'll tell you what, I was about half throttle, and it was very slow off the line. I actually, you kind of got to give it some with the lag there, but it really gets up and goes. Once it starts going, it gets up and goes. Pretty impressed actually with how that worked. Now I'm on a little bit of a rough road here, and it is handling these bumps very well. I really have no complaints as far as that goes. It seems to work pretty well. Everything feels tight, not getting all jostled around or anything like that. Now this is a larger SUV, but I would actually venture to say that it feels, when you're driving it, it feels a little bit smaller than it actually is. I don't feel like I'm in, something as big as what this vehicle is. Now the most important thing is, yeah, so many people now do buy the highest end luxury vehicle, but if you're not in the market for that, because obviously those prices just go crazy in a hurry, but if you're in the market for something that seats 8 people, this is a really good option. Now all vehicles now these days have gotten really expensive. That's just the world that we live in. So comparatively, it's tough to say, but as far as just, initial reaction, this thing works pretty well, and I think it would work for most families pretty well. Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna have like all the features of the newest vehicles and everything. This, like is the older interior, it's gonna be updated eventually here, but you might be able to get one a little bit cheaper right now with leftovers and things that way. It might be possible as well. But everything still works. The infotainment still is pretty up to date. It's gonna have everything that you need, even on this one that has virtually no options. Around the corners, you do feel like you're in a bigger vehicle, but still a little bit more nimble than I was expecting. And like I said, that 3.5 liter with that 300, it's actually the torque, the 470 foot-pounds of torque is really impressive. As far as interior goes, everything in here is pretty nice to touch. The only thing that I think actually looks to be just like a little bit on the base model cheaper side, which you're gonna have, is the dash not being wrapped. You can definitely tell that it was one that was intended to be, and looks really nice in the higher end models, but on this you can tell that that's what they were intending, as well as the door panels. Like you can see some of those things, which goes across every manufacturer every time you get a lower optioned vehicle. So it's not anything that you wouldn't expect. Most of the surfaces that you touch are soft, they feel pretty nice, and really, for a day-to-day use, it would really work pretty well. We made it back from our test drive, and I have to say it drove a lot nicer than what I thought. It really feels good for its size. It handles holes and rough roads really well. The power that the little 3.5 makes is impressive. I've driven one, but it was a long time ago, and this is the first newer one that I've driven with these newer power numbers, and I was really impressed with it. It seems fairly well refined. The 10-speed worked pretty well. It was maybe just a tick clunkier than I liked, but overall, if you were just driving it and not, getting on it or anything like that, you would never really notice anything. As far as value, yeah, I know, for everybody's gonna say, I'm sure, that $60,000 for a base model SUV is really high, and it is, but all new vehicles are that price these days. You really can't get away from it. It's just the world we live in, and I think if you're looking for a cheaper option rather than spending the $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 that SUVs are going for, this provides all the functionality, everything that you need. I do wish that the fuel mileage was a little bit better, because I think this is going to be the family hauler. That's what it's for. Function is the most important thing when you're bringing lots of kids or family along with you. And the 22 Highway, I think, for being the EcoBoost and a smaller twin turbo engine, that those numbers should be just a little bit higher. But that's just nitpicking. But overall, I want to hear if you guys think this is a buy or if this is a bust, what your thoughts on these new Expeditions are. I also want to give a big thank you to Blaise Alexander Ford in Mansfield for letting me check out this new Expedition. If you're interested in this or any of the other new Ford products or anything, you check out their website. Their info is going to be down below with a phone number. Tell them that Topline Racer sent you. With that, guys, thank you so much. Have a great day.